Hey guys, it's Phantom here, and welcome back to another video, everyone. So in today's video, I am going to be answering one of the most widely asked questions, at least to me personally, that concerns, what school should you pick in Wizard101 at the very start of the game? I get people just literally all the time that ask this question, whether they've played the game before and they're returning after many years, and they've kind of just forgotten how everything works and which schools are, the quote-unquote best and stuff like that. And also new players who have actually never played the game before and are looking to try it. Believe it or not, they do exist, and they have asked me this question, this very same question, many times before. Now, I just want to preface this video by saying this is not a school ranking, concerning PvP whatsoever at all, and it is also going to be based on just how effective each school is at pure solo questing, because I'm going to assume that most people asking those questions are probably going to be solo questing, so I think that's a pretty fair assumption to make, so I just want you guys to keep those two things in mind. Alright, anywho, let's jump into the video now. So there are pretty much three main schools in this game that I would consider to be very good for starting, players just starting out or returning players to the game, and those are going to be the schools, I'm just going to say them right now, of Fire, as well as Myth, as well as Death right here. Sorry, I had to find my characters there for a second. But these three schools, in my opinion, are going to be your go-to if you're coming back to the game or just starting out as a brand new player. I highly recommend you pick one of these three schools. Now, why, you may ask? Well, I'm going to get into that, and I also might talk about the other schools just a little bit as well, and how, the classes differ from one another, and reasons why you maybe shouldn't choose, for example, a balanced wizard to just start out your journey in the game. So let us go ahead and start off with the School of Death. So the School of Death is just an incredible school, in my opinion. It is probably the best school for PvE right now in this game, or at least for soloing, and the main reason why is because with death spells, you actually get a drain buff whenever you do damage to an enemy. So you're going to go ahead and, let's say, cast your Scarecrow right here. It's going to do 590 damage, and then you are going to get, I don't know, what is that, 295 damage back or something like that, as health that just goes back to heal you. I don't even think I really need to explain why this is just so useful, because you're literally getting free healing off of pips that you would already be spending on a different school just to do plain damage, but you're actually healing off of that as well. And of course you can buff up your spells, you can blade up, and then when you eventually hit, not only is your hit going to be stronger, the hit that does actual damage, but you're actually going to get more healing off of that hit. So that is why in lots and lots of battles, Death actually, is very superior, when it just comes to soloing, because you pretty much, and especially fast solo questing, because you finish really just mostly every battle with full health. Let's just say if it's a regular mob or boss fight, there's a really good chance that you're going to be finishing that battle just with full health and ready to move on to the next quest. Also, if you're in dire need during a battle of health, since you do, decent damage as a death, and of course you can heal yourself decently as well, then you can literally just use a spell in the middle of the battle, do some damage, get your health back up, and then blade up for another hit. It's honestly just an amazing, utility that Death has with their spells that is unrivaled by any other school. In addition to the drain spells just pumping up Death's survivability by that much, I would also say Death is very good because the stats are really balanced as well. So if you take a look at my Death here, I'm rocking max level gear. I got the Dragoon helmet, I've got the Malistaire robe, Dragoon boots, a wand, Darkmoor theme, Dragoon charm, random caramel ring, etc, good pets and stuff. And with all of this gear, combined with, of course, if you get a really good pet and everything, you can attain some pretty high damage as well as some pretty high resist. No fizzle on the accuracy as well. You get decent crit, and you also get max pips. So while Death might not get as much damage as some other schools, it can still attain a pretty decent amount, as well as, you know, pumping up their resist pretty well as well. And like I said before, even though they don't have, you know, the most amount of damage, they definitely have enough to get the job done, and definitely get some really good draining and healing off of that as well. One thing that I forgot to mention as well is enemies in PvP also don't really have, you know, that much health as well, so you're not even gonna need to output that much damage. So I think Death, like, honestly hit that sweet spot in between, you know, balanced stats and just a really good utility that just makes the questing experience so nice and fluid and honestly pretty easy. Just ending every single fucking battle with full health. It's actually just amazing, and something that you cannot do on any other school in this game. So that is pretty much my justification for why the Death School is, you know, among the top 3 schools for starting out in this game. So let us go ahead and move on to Myth here. Now, Myth is just Myth is just absolutely an amazing school, you know, for solo PvE as well. I haven't actually gotten my Myth to max level yet, but I think I've gotten, you know, a pretty good idea of the whole questing experience when it comes to Myth, and I feel like I can give you guys like a pretty good take on it. So yes, I truly do believe Myth is one of the best schools to start out with in the game, and that is purely for the reason, you know, it's not for like some cool utility that Death has, for example, but it's purely for the reason that Myth is just the most balanced school in this game. And why that's so good for starting out is, of course, not every school in this game is balanced, and not a lot of schools at all in this game are balanced. Like Storm really lacks defense, even though it excels in offense, and Fire, you know, suffers from a little bit of that as well, not as much. And then of course you got the schools of Ice and Life, which aren't really good at attacking at all, but you know, the defense is pretty good with those two, and of course with Life you have healing spells. But with Myth, it's really just cut and dry, I suppose, when it just comes to soloing, because you're given a decent amount of damage, you know, you're given a really solid amount of resist as well as accuracy, and with the right gear you can attain decent crit, maybe even decent block, decent power pips as well. Incoming and outgoing, you know, not as important, but you can definitely get those up as well. So Myth's stats are just super duper balanced. Their health is super duper balanced as well. So even though they don't really excel in any one single category as, you know, some of the other schools do, they're just they're not really lacking anything, if you know what I mean. They're not really supremely lacking anything either when it comes to, because of course Ice lacks offensive ability, and Fire, you know, and Storm lack defensive ability. Myth doesn't lack those. It doesn't really lack damage either, but none of those kind of aspects about Myth are really good either. But like I mentioned before, you know, mobs don't really have a lot of health in PvP, so you don't need to be super duper offensive. Having some defense is definitely nice, because they can do lots of damage at times, as, you know, probably a lot of you know, but you don't need to do a ton of damage. Myth also gets a really good AoE at level 48. This is definitely one of like the strongest AoEs in the game right now. It's really good. Orthrus, 700 damage for 7 pips. That will just absolutely carry you through every single world. So overall, Myth's balanced stats combined with the fact that it doesn't really lack in any area, I feel like makes this one of the most perfect schools to start out with in this game, because you're not really facing like a ton of struggles. Maybe like when it comes to healing, just a little bit, but Myth as a school I think is really just really good and balanced, and there's nothing else I can really say about that, except you're just going to do well in PvE because you're going to do decent damage and you're not going to really lack in anything else. So hopefully that makes sense, and let's move on to the next school. So last but certainly not least, we have the School of Fire. So let me go ahead and, yep, there's my guy. You guys saw him at the beginning of the video, but here he is. Yes, I do recommend Fire starting out if, you know, you're of course coming back to the game or whatever. Don't really know much about the schools. Fire is definitely a very viable option for you. Now, the reason I say this is because Fire honestly gets some pretty OP stats in the game. I'm pretty sure they are still the school right now that can still attain the highest amount of damage, so they've of course got that going for them. And damage nowadays too is especially a stat that you are going to want on every single wizard, especially if you're planning to solo, because with the recent crit changes and everything, you don't really need quite as much crit, and it doesn't matter as much when it comes to damage. Damage was also nerfed a little bit as well, but it's still more important now than ever to just have like a bunch of damage just to ensure that you can do a lot of damage to enemies. So fire really excels in damage. They are also given actually a pretty decent amount of health as well. So just take this example, right? Fire and storm both have, you know, really good offensive ability. They can both output huge amounts of damage. I think Storm does get a bit more crit, but Fire might edge out a little bit in terms of damage. Overall, they do really similar amounts of damage, but Fire actually gets way more health than a Storm. As you can see, I'm rocking about 7.5k on my Fire right now, which just isn't a bad amount of health at all. That is honestly more than you need to survive pretty much every single PvE battle that is thrown in front of you. So when you combine this with the damage factor as well, you just get a really good school kind of overall. Of course, I have mentioned before that it does lack in defense. As you can see, my resist is not really the best, but you know, it's enough to get me through. I can also of course attain max accuracy as well as some decent crit. You know, a little bit of block, but not really as important these days. A little bit of pierce, and of course, well, you know, my pips, my pips might not be max, but I'm pretty sure there are ways to, of course, attain that as well. A lot of it does kind of come down to personal preference and like what gear you're using and whatnot. But Fire overall, really offensive school with really decent survivability as well. That is supposed to kind of negatively counteract that supreme offensive ability that it's given. But it really doesn't. I don't know, for some reason with Fire, it really doesn't, if that makes sense. So you excel in all these aspects. It's enough defense to get you through. And overall, just starting out in PvE, I think someone could definitely have a really good time with this school, because you don't even die that much and you're outputting just a ton of damage to absolutely slaughter your enemies. But that is going to be pretty much it for this video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. I really hope this helped you out. You know, all the new players out there looking to start up a new wizard and are wondering what school to pick. So if you guys did enjoy, you could always leave a like on the video. It is very much appreciated, and I'm thankful for any support I can get. So anyways, though, I'll see you all in the next video or stream, whenever that may be. So take care. Peace out, everyone.